locked up, that he would be frightened if the door was left open. The doctor will be frightened. Is it possible? Asked Mr. Lorry in surprise. Mr. Lorry cannot believe that such a thing has happened to Dr. Manette. He is afraid of people, he is afraid if the door is kept unlocked. It is possible, replied Defarge bitterly. Notice the word used by the writer, bitterly. In Defarge's heart there is anger, there is hatred, there is bitterness because of some wrong which has been done to him. In this beautiful world, such things are possible. And not only possible, they are actually done every day. Such is the state of France. So not only Defarge, but all the people, the poor people in France are desperate. They are in despair because they are not provided even with the basic necessities of life. This conversation had been held in so low a whisper that none of it reached the young lady's ears. But as they neared the top of the stairs, she was shaking, she was trembling. Maybe she doesn't remember her father at all. And she's afraid to meet her father. She's wondering in what condition she will meet him. And the conversation is between Mr. Jarvis Lorry and Monsieur Defarge. So she is trembling, she is shaking. Courage, my dear, courage. The worst will be over in a minute. Dr. Manette will see you, maybe he will recognize you, and the worst part of it will be over in a minute. So be brave. He is encouraging Lucy. Think only of the happiness you will bring him, Mr. Lorry said. That is, Dr. Manette will be happy to see his daughter after so many years and the happy life that they can lead in the future. That is, they are planning to take him back to England. At last, they were near the top. Suddenly, at a turn in the stairs, they came upon three men who were looking into the room through a crack in the door. The three men who were earlier in the wine shop, they were looking through a crack in the door. Hearing footsteps, they turned and rose. When they heard Jarvis Lorry and Dr. Manette and Lucy Manette and Defarge coming up, they turned, they got up and they decided to leave. They were the three men who had been drinking in the wine shop. Leave us, men. We have business here, said Defarge. The three went down quietly. Mr. Lorry was angry. He whispered to Defarge, do you make a show of Monsieur Manette? Why are you allowing these people, these three men, to look at Dr. Manette in his maybe miserable condition, and also they might be making fun of him? So, why are you making a show of him? They are all men of my own name, Jakes. You are English and do not understand. Stay here a minute, please. So Defarge says you are English. You cannot even imagine the situation that is in France at the moment. The terrible suffering and oppression of the poor people. So as I told you here, Defarge and all the others who will take part as leaders in the French Revolution, they call themselves as Jakes in order to hide their identity. So we have Jakes 1, Jakes 2, Jakes 2000 also, it goes on like that. Stay here a minute, please. Defarge ran his key along the door as if to give a warning to the person inside. He wanted to warn Dr. Manette that visitors are coming. So he made a little bit of noise. Then he put it in the lock and turned it slowly. The door opened. He looked into the room and said something. He spoke something to Dr. Manette, who is sitting on the stool. A faint voice answered. He's so weak. Dr. Manette has been in prison for so long that he has become very weak. Defarge looked back and signaled to them to enter. He made a sign that Lucy and Mr. Jarvis Lorry should come in. Then he put it in the lock and turned it slowly. The door opened. He looked into the room and said something. A faint voice answered. Defarge looked back and signaled to them to enter. Mr. Lorry put his arm around Lucy's waist because she's still trembling. She's still frightened to meet her father because she's not aware of what condition he might be in. Mr. Lorry put his arm around Lucy's waist and held her. Go in, he said. Go in. I'm afraid, she answered, still shaking, trembling, afraid. Afraid of what? I'm afraid of him, my father. He pulled her arm around his neck, lifted her a little, and hurried her into the room. He took her inside the room. Work was going on in the room. With his back towards the door and his face towards the window, a white-haired man sat on a long bench, bent forward. He was very busy making shoes. Now he had been in prison, and in prison the authorities kept him occupied. They taught him how to make shoes, and he is now like a shoemaker. Remember, he is Dr. Manette, but because of some unfortunate events which happened, he is now making shoes. And it is in this condition that Lucy Manette comes to see her father. I think when I read the story, you might remember some of it. Lucy, very gently, very patiently, very lovingly, she tries to talk to her father, and she tries to bring back his memory, his old memories to his mind. And to some extent, she has succeeded, and in the end, Jarvis Lorry and Lucy, they take their father back home. Answer the questions with reference to context. You have some comprehension questions. Why do you write in the public street? Are there no better places to write such words? Now, reference to context means I did it earlier. You have to write who said these words, to whom it was said, in what context it was said, why these words were said. Who said these words and to whom? These words are spoken by Monsieur Defarge to Gaspard. Describe the speaker's appearance. Describe the speaker's appearance. You can write that note from the text, it is there. What are the persons spoken to written in the public street? What did he use to write it? So you can try and answer question A, 1, 2 and 3, and I will send you the correct answers.